By all accounts, may contain sporadic profanity and occasional innuendo because we're no longer bound by the constraints of the FCC empire.
Zach, I don't know about you, but I've had fantasies of being pressed up against very attractive Argentinian, Colombian people, but I feel like getting smashed into iron fences while pressed up against these beautiful people is not exactly the fantasy I was thinking about.
No, it's not part of the fantasy that I just had in my head when you mentioned that. And now that that's there, it's a nightmare more than it is a fantasy at this point. Being pressed against anybody, and you know me, I would have been sweating and gross and nasty. Let me tell you, the nightmare wouldn't be for me or you at that point. It'd be for whoever's standing next to us when I was dripping my grossness all over them. Yeah, but fun times at Hard Rock Stadium.
Human beings pressed against each other, sweating on one another, and almost passing out and something worse on one another. Holy mother of God.
By all accounts, is not recorded in front of a live studio audience.
Copa America might have killed the fantasy, might have legitimately just killed the fantasy. And man, I don't know. And I've been to Hard Rock Stadium through some epic shit shows, Florida State, Miami games,
right.
and just Florida coming in to play Miami, Dolphins, Jets games, and nothing. And I mean nothing even approached the nonsense, the near catastrophe, the chaos, the savagery, the absurdity, and the incompetence of that Copa America final with Colombia and Argentina. I mean, what the hell is that when you've got a near crush at the gates and people without tickets are running right up to the entrances? And I'm embarrassed. Like, it's such a bad look, but I also feel like this is another opportunity for people to say, "Oh, see, South Florida, they don't deserve anything. They're terrible at this stuff." And it's actually, for once, it's not all South Florida's fault. What a disaster! Like, that could have been an epic casualty situation. I mean, for Christ's sake, man.
I just looked at all the social media of all the people that were actually inside the gate at the point, the reporters and everyone, and you could see the outside. It was like like Walmart on Black Friday. It was like something I've never seen before.
Like, look at this.
That's ridiculous. Where's the security? How do you even have security for something like that? You can't. You can at that point. And yeah, it was a shit show at this stadium that we call home at Hard Rock Stadium. But right then and there, that picture right there sums everything up to me. There is no controlling that crowd. Call the National Guard. That might be your best bet.
I honestly, God's honest truth, I told my wife, like, they might have to call in the National Guard.
Right.
The match started, Colombia, Argentina, Copa America final started 90 minutes late because of fans without tickets rushing to the gates, trying to get in, trying to break in, climbing fences. They got into the suite area. I mean, look at this. This is Club 72 at Hard Rock Stadium. This goes to, is this lower level suites or is this club? I'm trying to remember if this is like club level suites. Regardless, this is a very restricted area. You're not just coming in, and it wasn't just the gates. It was breaking into the suite areas. This escalator completely destroyed. And then like this, people climbing into the AC vent. Again, I've never seen anything like this.
No,
it's insane. It's embarrassing. And it leaves a black mark on South Florida. But so the organization putting this thing on, CONMEBOL, they run all of soccer in South America. They're in charge of the nation on nation tournaments, friendlies, whatever in South America. They put all of this on. They ran this entire event, ran this entire thing, and it's been bad. The fields have been bad. The training facilities bad. But that's largely because CONMEBOL, this organization, declined any help from anybody in the United States. And in this instance, were given suggestions and offered help by the Dolphins and by Miami-Dade County, and apparently just ignored it, according to multiple reports. Just ignored it, and if they wanted help, it would cost them money, so they just say, hey, we're CONMEBOL. We do this all the time. We'll take care of it. It's no problem at all. And it turned out like this. Like they had Uruguayan players going into the stands fighting Colombians the previous week, and all of this was incredibly avoidable. And I don't want to just dismiss blame of the fans. Like it's not a secret. There were a lot of yellow shirted Colombians that ticketless, and sure, there were some Argentinians, but the majority of the problems were coming from the Colombian contingent of what came out to Hard Rock Stadium for this Copa America final. I don't think I'm saying anything that's unfair with that, right? Like this was, from a fan perspective, this was largely, not entirely, but largely a Colombian fan caused problem.
Right. You know who I feel bad for? I feel bad when you see the stories now of the people that couldn't even get into the stadium at all that bought tickets, and that the people that did buy their tickets and got in the stadium, that the people weren't helping them get the people out of their seats because it was just too much. You couldn't do it. You couldn't ask for the usher to help out with 8,000 people in one section. You just couldn't do that. People paid a shit show of shit shows, Ken.
Yeah, and like $2,000 for tickets.
Right. That's what I saw. Right.
And the reason that they had to open the gates to these non-ticketed people who were breaking into the stadium is that it became a potential life or death issue, because the bigger crush on this gate that came, people were going to start collapsing. People were going to get trampled. People could die. People could asphyxiate. So they made the decision, security and CONMEBOL and other organizations made the decision just to open the gates, and they'll figure it out later, just to keep people from flat out dying, especially in that heat. Mike, it's just so incompetent. The whole thing is so incompetent, but it does not dismiss the fact that these people who showed up without tickets, I mean, we're talking some absolute scumbags.
Yeah.
I mean, that's scumbag behavior. There's no excuse for it. That's just outright human indecency. Seriously, what are you doing? But here's the other problem. CONMEBOL especially knows South American soccer fans. The things certainly, there is a different level of veracity to it. I'm trying not to judge, because every part of the world is different in the way they fan, right? In the United States, we have much different approaches than they do in South America, much different approaches than they do in Europe. One thing I will say is that when tickets are going for $1,500, $2,000, $2,500, and unless you're the top 1% of the 1%, you're the only people that can afford that ticket. There is something poetic about the common man trying to break in to the ivory tower to go see the everyman's game, the world's game, soccer. There is something poetic to that. But then when it starts causing property damage and starts causing potential loss of life, then it's an issue. That said, people know, especially here in South Florida and CONMEBOL, they know what the South American soccer fan is like. Yet, no precautions, a complete lack of security, because they decided to go the cheap route. Dolphins, we don't need to go. Miami-Dade County, we're good. We're solid. They didn't change any security perimeters. They had too few members of security there. They didn't have nearly enough police. Like, this is a clear CONMEBOL South American soccer organization problem. To me, this has no reflection whatsoever on Hard Rock Stadium, the Dolphins, or even the U.S. as a whole, who's going to host the World Cup and be just fine doing it, because FIFA, despite the fact that they're all criminals, they know what they're doing. They actually know what they're doing. But this, it's such a black mark on South Florida that is not South Florida caused, and I'm pretty pissed off about it, to be quite honest.
Oh, it's perfect for like the person out there that always loves to rip South Florida fans, leaving games early, not showing up. Look what happens. Look at their animals. They're trying to get in the stadium. I mean, I'm thinking about one thing from last night that I didn't even think about until just now. That poor security guard making $18 an hour, standing at the front, waiting to find out what to do with those people. Because at one point, that security guard just said, screw this. It's not worth $20 an hour. I'm getting out of here. Like, look at this crowd. I'm going to get trampled. I'm probably going to get my ass beat if I don't let somebody in. I'm good. And I would have walked out of there. That was a disaster from start to finish. When the reports started coming out from like the reporters or people in the crowd there, and you started seeing it trickling on, X, Twitter, whatever you're on at that point, or even Instagram if you're seeing pictures, I didn't think that was real at first. I was like, what is going on? Like, how is that even possible that this is being allowed? Why are these people in the park? I know you can't check. Oh, maybe you could and you should. When people are trying to get in that parking lot, check to see if somebody has a ticket. Like, if you don't have a ticket, why are you letting someone in the parking lot to tailgate if there's no tailgating? Like, I saw that was one of the signs. No tailgating. It's just come in if you have a ticket and go to the game. At that point, do something. And then when the crowds start getting out of control, what the hell are you doing with yellow shirt security people trying to handle this? How is that even remotely possible? That's why we saw that destruction to that damn escalator, which I've never seen anything like that before. And the fact that people are jumping through air vents to get in there. The last time I saw something like that, I think it was in Ocean's 11, the movie. Like, that was it. Like, I haven't seen anything like that in forever. This was one of the biggest black eyes I've ever seen for South Florida sports. And in all honesty, like you said before and summed it up perfectly, it really has nothing to do with South Florida sports. Like, that's the crazy part. But it's in Miami. It's our Hard Rock. South Florida fans, here we go. We're going to take the brunt of this for another couple of weeks. I know that.
It just, as soon as it was Colombia and Argentina, and even talking with Colombians, they would have told you, hey, a lot of Colombians without tickets are going to show up, and this could be a potential problem. This ain't the first rodeo, right? So Colombians knew Colombians were going to probably go this route, right? Argentinians knew Argentinians were probably going to go this route. And by probably, I mean definitely. And it was no secret. And a tweet from Hard Rock Stadium saying, if you don't have a ticket, don't come into the parking lots. You can't tailgate. That ain't going to cut it. Apparently, they didn't check when cars were coming in. They didn't even check. They just let people in because, again, that's CONMEBOL. I can't tell you how little every other entity in American soccer had to do with this tournament. CONMEBOL, they ran everything. We're in charge of everything, the security, the facilities, the training, everything. This has nothing to do with U.S. Soccer or Miami-Dade County or Hard Rock Stadium. They wrought this upon themselves. The only wise decision they made all night long was to try and prevent death, and they opened the gates. Unfortunately, it comes at the cost of thousands, not hundreds, not a handful, thousands of people who paid 4 figures for tickets to this match, not even being allowed in because they opened the gates long enough to cause the swell to dissipate, and then they locked everything up. It's a nightmare. It's truly it's so frustrating because of how avoidable this entire thing was. What really angers me about this too is that now it's open season for outsiders, foreigners to say, see, the U.S. They can't host a massive soccer tournament. This is going to be a disaster. No, we hosted the World Cup fine in 94. Hosted the Copa America Centenario just fine in 2016. CONMEBOL went cheap. CONMEBOL was incompetent. And that's why all these things happen. FIFA is going to come in, and I promise you, Zach, those perimeters around the security are going to be another 100 yards out, maybe a little less, maybe a good 400 feet out. But the security is going to start in the parking lot at Hard Rock Stadium, just like you see at the Super Bowl. That perimeter needs to be way further out. But you're not going to tell me that a stadium that regularly hosts Super Bowls and national championship college football games and the biggest concert tours in the world, that stadium, that venue was the problem last night for an event where it was going to be at capacity, which that stadium is an awful lot. It was a mix of, and I don't want passion to mask scumbag behavior, because I think sometimes, that's just the passion of the fans. No, let's be honest. Without tickets, these were scumbags, okay? They don't care. But on the other side of it, I understand this being a once-in-a-generation event to see Colombia on this stage playing this type of match. And in your backyard, in your home in South Florida, and you have no chance of affording these tickets, might as well try and take a chance, right?
Right. Hey, Kate, I used to sneak into the movie theater once in a while. It wasn't the same thing as this when I was a kid, but give me a break.
But
I mean, Ken.
It's so I get it, but the attitude, the approach of the South American fan, and the lack of security, all those things, those are to blame. It's not the venue, right? But again, totally predictable, and it sucks. And now we pay the consequences for
it. Right. And that's where it sucks, because you can't tell me stadiums in this country don't hold a lot of people. You go to a random college football Saturday in the Southeast, you're going to have 100,000 people at a stadium, and you're not going to see anything like that. You said it before, Super Bowls in multiple states, 60, 70,000 in the stadium, not a problem. From a 20,000 seat stadium arena to 130,000 seat a stadium, you don't see things like this. You don't see it for Taylor Swift concerts or Super Bowls or any of this stuff. Yet we have something like this, a big old soccer match down here, football match down here, and things get totally out of control. You have to blame, like you said, the higher ups for this, whoever's running this whole thing, because I promise you, if Stephen Ross and Tom Garfinkel were in charge of all this, that would have never happened. Tom Garfinkel would have had cops at every gate, not letting people in without tickets, like the normal thing to do. This was just a complete, like, you couldn't have summed it up perfectly than you did before. This was a complete shit show, and the problem with this is that it looks like it's a bunch of South Florida, Miami people that did this, and not a big football thing. Oh, it's a South Florida fan thing again. And here we go again. Just rewind the whole thing, and let's get it started with the rest of the country ripping Miami again. We're used to it. We'll take it.
With that stadium in particular, I've never felt as if I've been in danger from a crowd movement standpoint. I felt I'm in danger because of drunk Jets fans trying to fight people and doing that whole thing. But as far as danger of I can't move, I could asphyxiate, there could be a major issue. No, everything's moved pretty well. And again, Miami, Florida State games, especially when Florida State was at its Jameis Winston powers, and night games, and everything was fine. Like, everything worked out. It's hot. It's uncomfortable. It feels awful in that stadium when it's hot, because the roof is great, except that no air moves. So it's just like sitting in a sauna. But that has nothing to do with this. Whether it's Dolphins Jets, a Dolphins Monday night game, a Dolphins Sunday night game, a Dolphins playoff game. I've never experienced anything like that. A Super Bowl where, again, they move the perimeters way out. Everything's well organized. National championship game, been there, done that. No issue. This was truly a one-off because it was a perfect confluence of events. Colombians, Argentinians, tickets that were in the four figures to start, and an organization trying to put it on this event that is completely incompetent and had no idea what it was doing, and just decided to put fingers in ears. The Colombians would have told you, we live amongst them, would have told you this was going to happen. The Argentinians, we live amongst them. They would have told you this was, listen to them. They tried to warn you the entire time. They're not surprised. I'm not surprised. You're not surprised, because this is just sort of what happens, but there's ways to mitigate it. And CONMEBOL just failed to even take one single solitary step to try and mitigate it after we had Uruguay in the stands fighting Colombian fans whose families were in danger. That happened like 7 days before this took place. So
it's ridiculous.
Stupid. The whole thing's stupid. Hard Rock Stadium, though, is typically very easy to get in. To me, one of the easiest to get out as well.
Right.
Not out of the parking lot per se, especially after the construction, but getting out of the stadium, extremely easy. I think the most recent worst stadium shit show I've encountered. You remember when Miami and Florida opened the season at the Citrus Bowl, or now
Camping Stadium, right?
Yeah, and it took forever to get in there. And getting out of that stadium, like physically walking out of that stadium, what a trash bag. I mean, that place absolutely sucks if you have a sold-out event. And I understand they don't do a lot of sellouts anymore at Camping World Stadium, at least for sporting events. But, man, like that sucked. That's the last really bad traffic stadium experience, and I mean traffic in stadium, that I've experienced, where I'm like, this actually feels kind of dicey and dangerous right now.
I've been to Final Fours. You have to. Super Bowls, the whole deal, where there's nutty people, lots of them. And like you said, down here at Hard Rock Stadium or the Orange Bowl back in the day, when you have 60, 70,000 people in a stadium and it was packed to the brim, people standing on the gates, the whole deal, standing room only everywhere, 100 degrees outside, no more water to sell. I've been at stadiums like that. Yeah. None of that compared to what I saw last night. When my wife comes into the room and shows me something off Instagram and asks me, what is this? Because she had no idea about the soccer being played 25 minutes down the street from my house, down the highway. And she goes, what's going on here? And I'm like, oh, that's a big, there's a final going on. It's, Colombia, Argentina. She goes, look at this. There must be 20,000 people outside one of these gates all trying to break it down. And I'm like, this is not going to end well. 15 minutes later, didn't start well and wasn't ending well at that point. It's incredible. But it goes down to one thing. It could have been easily taken care of if you just don't allow people in that gate, in the parking lot, that aren't ticketed. It's no big deal. Even if you're trying to scalp a ticket, you can't come in. Scalp it from outside. Figure it out that way. Do what you have to do. If you don't have a ticket, you cannot park your car or come into the parking lot. If that would have happened, that might have mitigated at least a little of this, I think. Maybe not the whole thing, because I still think people would have ran into the stadium somehow in the parking lot because it was that crazy. But when you see these pictures and you know that you're someone who covers the Dolphins or is a Dolphin season ticket holder or Hurricanes, and you see – I have never seen anything like that for any game that's ever been at that stadium, any event. We got Taylor Swift coming up in October. Doubtful it's going to look like that for that as well. It's just incredible. That right there is my favorite picture, because this honestly looks like me and 20 of my buddies trying to sneak into like a game, maybe when we're in college. Like, oh man, the only way to get in the stadium right now is here. And you know what I would have been? No bleeping chance by going in that air vent in a Hard Rock Stadium. I don't care if at the end of it there's a pot of gold. I am not getting in that thing. That is the most ridiculous picture and craziest video I've ever seen of people trying to get up in the air vents to try to get seats. This was crazy. This was something that should have never happened. And now that it's happened, it is incredible to see these images and see the stories afterwards. They're all over the place. The stories of, like you said, people paying $2,500 a ticket, 2 tickets for $5,000, and not being allowed in even with a valid ticket. This was the shit show among all shit shows, folks. This was it.
But again, and I understand the passion, but let's not use the word passion to mask scumbag behavior.
Yeah,
and
no,
it's not even close. There's a lot of yellow shirts. Vast majority yellow shirts involved in this with all the videos. So, Colombian fans, I just acknowledge that you were a big part of the problem.
Right. Well done for this scene right here. Right.
And we love you, but just acknowledge you were a big part of the problem at this event.
It's not a good look.
It's not a good look. Right. I can understand if people start to judge a little bit. We'll put it that way. We're not judging. But I could understand where some people maybe would go to that place. The air vents is where I drew the line. Like, it was bad enough. The climbing through the air vents is where I sort of draw the line and say, all right, I can't even justify that any longer. It's not.
I don't know if I could get drunk enough for someone to say, hey, we could get front row tickets to this awesome event, but we got to sneak through the air vents to get there. I'm good. Like, put me in back of my car. Let me sleep in the car. Somebody open it up another beer for me, roll me a joint, do me something, get me out of the way of all that. That is ridiculous. I don't even want to go to an event if that's my only way in. Give me a break. Jeez. Right. Passion, or I don't care if those people, we just love our team. Bullshit. What were you doing, buddy? What were you doing? Right.
Man. By all accounts, youtube.com/@allacountshow, youtube.com/@allacountshow, the podcast, rss.com/podcast/allacountshow, by all accounts, Zach Krantz, Ken Levicka. You want to talk Jalen Brunson? You want to talk Tua? You want to talk about your butt? What do you want to talk about?
Ooh, let's save my butt for a little bit. Let's go Jalen Brunson here. I like Jalen Brunson's story here.
Here's our account. Here is our next account here by all accounts, and this comes from Adrian Wojnarowski. Woj at Woj ESPN. In a largely unprecedented financial concession to give roster flexibility to a contender, New York Knicks star Jalen Brunson has agreed on a 4-year, $156.5 million extension, $113 million less guaranteed than he's eligible to receive in 1 year. Jalen Brunson making a massive sacrifice to ensure that the Knicks can stay financially viable and can contend for several years as they bring in every former alum from Villanova onto that roster. I hate to acknowledge Knicks' success.
I know.
It's extremely upsetting, okay? That said, I mean, how can you sit here and ignore how epic that is? How big of a winner move that is for Jalen Brunson? And I've seen some detractors who say, "Oh, it's going to make things so much more difficult for other athletes, other NBA players who want to get their max contracts because now everyone's going to point at Jalen Brunson making that sacrifice." Bleep that. There are too many people that say, "Oh, greed. And then as soon as a player tries to make a sacrifice, you've got the people coming out of the woodwork. "Oh, it's going to ruin it for the rest of the players." Listen, I am all for it. These owners don't need financial protection, but I have a lot of respect for players who know that they may have to make a sacrifice in order to achieve a greater goal. It's sometimes it can't be both you get yours and you get a ring. Sometimes that's just not realistic. So what Jalen Brunson's trying to do, and whether or not it works remains to be seen. I tend to think that with a team full of really good role players, they're not going to win a championship, but that's the path they've decided to take. They're too far in it now to take the foot off the gas, so they're leaning into it. And Jalen Brunson saying, "Hey, we're going to be hitting that second apron. That's going to put us in a whole bunch of problems here with this organization. I'll do this for the team." I have nothing but respect for that. That's so good. And as far as the Knicks are concerned, Jalen Brunson is the most impactful player in that New York Knicks organization since Patrick Ewing. Forget Melo. Forget Amara Stoudemire. There's no way Carmelo would have ever done anything like this. There's no way Amara Stoudemire would have done anything like this. And then in retrospect, they didn't win nearly enough to be considered like this. But Patrick Ewing into Jalen Brunson, that's the lineage of most impactful players in Knicks history. Jalen Brunson already is should be one of the all-time Knicks fan. I love that guy. Get his jersey, put him up in the rafters already. And he's never even gotten past the second round of the playoffs, but it doesn't matter because this kind of thing, there's a buy-in from him with this organization that we haven't seen from anybody in decades.
It's infectious when a guy like this, who's the star player of your team, basically does something like this, because it shows that he wants this team to not just stay intact with what they have now and keep the guys around, but bring other guys in. This is a purely team culture type thing. And I hate to use that word culture when you say the Knicks, but that's what it kind of looks like, right? It kind of looks like where like things have changed in that organization, because for years and years and years, how many times did we laugh when it came to one of those free agent summers where like the Heat had $60 million to spend, the Knicks had $70 million to spend, the Clippers had this, Boston, Houston, like 8 or 9 teams could all sign max guys, and no one ever wanted to go to New York. They went to Brooklyn before they went to New York, KD and Kyrie a couple of years back, and the rumor was they're going to be Knicks, and they ended up being Nets. No one ever wanted to play for this team because of the ownership, management, the players on the team. It was just not one of those. The Knicks were just a sad organization, and I finally feel like they're going in the right direction, which is scary. Maybe not championship. We're going to be contenders every year, but they're a top 3 seed in the East now, and they're going to stay that way for a couple of years if Jalen Brunson and company, the rest of the Villanova crew, all stay there and play team ball. I don't think they'll win a championship. I think you're right on that. I don't think they're enough heavy on top to win one of those games, but I will tell you this. It's sad to say the Knicks are doing the right thing right now, and they're making the right moves, and they're bringing in the right personnel that fits around their star, Jalen Brunson, and role players. it's just it stinks. It stinks to give them credit because I never want to give them credit. I never think they deserve credit because they've been such a sad organization for 2 or 3 straight decades now. But man, you bring in a guy like Brunson, he changes kind of the attitude. I'm not going to say culture, I'm going to say attitude. The attitude in that organization and the players around it, they bring around guys that he's played with. Thibodeau is a great guy for this situation also, that I keep teasing you because I'm just waiting for Jay Wright to take that job at one point in the next couple of years anyway. Or Hurley. It's Hurley or Jay Wright's job in the next 3 years, I think, no matter what at this point. It just stinks. It stinks to think that Jalen Brunson would do this for the Knicks team. I wish it was another team doing this and not the Knicks, but they got some good players, not great, good players on that team. They're a 2, 3, 4 seed in the East. They're probably not the best team in the East, obviously, with Boston or whoever else, if Philadelphia gets better. But yeah, them doing the right thing kind of hurts. It kind of doesn't feel right when they do the right thing.
Well, I think they come off as doing the right thing, though, because they have a guy who is
likable
and is a winner and has one prerogative, and that's to go for it, and that's Jalen Brunson. Because if your star doesn't have that mindset, this ain't working with the Knicks. It's just not. There's total buy-in because he allows himself to be coachable, and he's a hell of a player, and they mesh together extremely well. What the Knicks have right now from a personality standpoint is it's a perfect storm of cohesiveness, and it doesn't happen often in professional sports where you have something like that, and they've been able to catch lightning in a bottle with that. Which makes it shocking to me that Julius Randle's still around, because for me, that mindset, his mindset, the way he conducts himself, does not mesh with this core. I don't think Julius Randle's part of the Knicks core anymore. Like, I don't know he is at all.
He wasn't in that team for the final 2-3 months of that season when they started making the run.
If they tried to jettison him for value, I don't think that's a terrible call to make up for the 15,000 first-round picks they lost getting Mikal Bridges. It's not going to allow them to get a superstar the money that Jalen Brunson sacrificed. But what it's going to do is allow them to re-up with all these guys that have helped get them to this spot. Again, is that going to be enough? I don't think so. I don't think so. But it is going to keep the Knicks very relevant and in contention. When I think you're talking about that franchise, that's extremely important in the grand scheme of things. Now, Jalen Brunson's going to have an opportunity to recoup the money that he gave up with a 4th-year option that's going to pay him lump sum, all of that cash. Now, you are putting your trust in James Dolan. This did cross my mind that, hey, what a feel-good story. Jalen Brunson doing it for the good of the franchise. The guy who runs the franchise is definitely an all-world dirtbag. Yeah. Can you really trust James Dolan? This would be a next level dastardly move, though. If something so publicized, which Jalen Brunson sacrificing his money is, for James Dolan to say, I don't know. I don't know if this is going to be something that I'm willing to follow through on. That would be one hell of a backtrack there for all of us to see. So I've got to think that the leverage win is with Jalen Brunson in this spot.
Well, just picture this in your mind. We're getting to like the All-Star break. You know, All-Star break's not all obviously in the middle of the season. It's like 55 games into the season. Yeah. The Knicks are 25-30 heading into the All-Star break. A couple big injuries on the team outside of Jalen Brunson. Maybe some other guys go down. And all of a sudden, this great heart story of Jalen Brunson being the savior in New York. Oh, by the way, Woj just went on ESPN and said Jalen Brunson's been traded for a first-round pick and a second-round pick in 2029 or something like that. Something stupid. Yeah. That would be so Knicks-esque for like just the start of the season to go terribly wrong. A 5-15 start. What are we going to do with this team? Win a couple more games. And then somebody calls up. The Lakers call up and say, we're going to give you 2 firsts for Jalen Brunson. And within a blink of an eye, Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart are both Lakers. You know, like it wouldn't shock me at all, but it does seem like you're right. Because James Dolan, to me, he has to be the most hated owner in the NBA. He's got to be right up there. If he's not 1, he's 2, right? Like he's right there.
Yeah, ask Charles Oakley about how he feels about it.
Right.
But Brunson, he's got the $37.1 million less over the next 3 years to make sure that the Knicks are okay financially with the aprons. Fourth-year player option. If he opts out, he's eligible for a 4-year, $323 million deal in 2028, or 5 years, $418 in 2029. So again, it does pose the question, because he would certainly deserve both of those from the Knicks if he opts out of that player option. It does sit in the back of your mind. What if he opts out and then James Dolan says, oh, welcome to free agency? I would not put it past James Dolan, but Jesus God, would it be out there in the open and fully exposed for everyone to see that level of dirtbag? Which not even James Dolan, I think, would be willing to be flapping in the wind like that.
Oh no, he would be. James Dolan is the one of the ultimate POSs of all time. And my brother's been a Knicks fan for 30 years. I mean, my brother's in his mid-40s. Since he's like 12 years old, he's been a huge Knicks fan. 10 years old. He would trade anything in the world for James Dolan to not be the owner of that team anymore. He told me he would trade 2 seasons of like 1-81 just to get James Dolan out of there to sell that team. He would do anything he can. Any Knicks fan would say the same thing at this point. But you painted like the perfect. Remember those books back in the day, Choose Your Own Adventure, where you had to pick, like, do you want Jimmy to cross the river, or should Jimmy walk up 800 more feet and try to cross it? This is the Jim Dolan thing. Do we give all the money to Brunson right now, or do we wait a couple years? And it would be so fitting too that year before the extension, he gets all team first NBA, so that bumps it up even more. Like he's able to get like 10 or 12% more on that contract. And then, like you said, all right, I'm going to opt out, and then I'm going to opt back in for this 4-year deal, and the Knicks don't offer to him. Oh man, that would be. I think at that point, what we saw last night at Hard Rock would happen at Madison Square Garden with all the Knicks fans. They would be jumping through the roof, the rafters, the ventilator, whatever they could to try to kill James Dolan.
What would happen if in that third year, Brunson suffers a season-ending injury, requires a significant amount of rehab, so he opts out? Like, for me, as someone with a soul and a conscience, I'd say, yeah, he deserves that max deal that we just discussed. 4 years, $323 million. Okay, he's earned that just by agreeing to this pay cut. But again, we're talking James Dolan in this spot. Does he say, hey, go Ken,
hold on. Can you see James Dolan in a meeting with Leon Rose or whoever else is in there? God forbid, Jalen Brunson, they're in a meeting the morning after. Listen, we just got the doctors back on Jalen. His Achilles is torn. His knee's a little messed up. He's got a little foot problem. It's all going to be good, but it's going to probably be 9 months of rehab before he's back. Going to miss probably 2 or 3 months into next season if he's re-signed, and then probably going to be another year before he's even back to even like Jalen Brunson type. It's going to be tough, but he is eligible for a 5-year, $419 million extension because he opted out. So what do we do here? James Dolan sits back in his chair, laughs, and says, offer him a 1-year, $10 million deal until he's back. And that's all we're going to give him, with a big smile on his face, knowing that he doesn't have to pay $500 million for Jalen Brunson anymore. I can see it happening. There's no way in the long run this is good for Jalen Brunson. It's just not, because of who he's dealing with. But man, oh man, this is going to be a fun story to watch for the next 3 to 5 years to see how they really think of Jalen Brunson, and if this team wins. I'm not saying a championship, but if the Knicks make the Eastern Conference Finals once in the next 2 or 3 years, Jalen Brunson's the hero among all heroes in that city. Right.
No doubt about it.
Hero.
Jalen Brunson is so impressive. Everything about him so impressive, from his game, from how he came from early in his NBA career, relative nothing, to now where he's the face of that Knicks franchise, to the sacrifices that he's made for the Knicks. Then you're putting your trust in James Dolan.
Ooh.
It's done his part. And to me, again, he's the most impactful Knicks player since Patrick Ewing, but you're putting your trust in James Dolan. Everything seems too rosy and fairy tale-ish right now with the New York Knicks. This is uncharted territory. It's not supposed to feel like this. It's not supposed to operate so feel good and warm and fuzzy like this. When does the other shoe, when does the other Nike drop here? Because it feels like that has to happen at some point, ultimately because it's James Dolan and the New York Knicks. Okay? So I don't know. So what I would say is Knicks fans, enjoy this now, because there's a good chance that the bottom falls out at some point, just based on, I don't know, the entire history of the Knicks and what we know about the inner workings, the soul of James Dolan. Okay?
Right. You're waiting for that other shoe to drop. The other shoe's got $250 million in it, and James Dolan has already thrown that in the river. And the only person that can go and get that out of the river is James Dolan, because it's his money and he doesn't care about anyone else. Right. I can't wait. I can't wait to see how this all works out. I love Jalen Brunson. Like I said, I hate saying anything good about the Knicks. I hate the Knicks. I hate the Jets. That's just how I am. Canada still loves me, I think. But these are the kind of people that maybe it's possible.
They're forgiving.
Right. They're forgiving. Right. And I like Tim Horton, so I should get some points for that. But man, I wouldn't want to sit across the table from James Dolan in any kind of negotiation outside of me trying to get out of there and not trying to stay in there, because James Dolan to me is a backstabbing mother, you know what, and he is waiting for this to not probably work so he doesn't have to pay $500 million to Jalen Brunson, because then Jalen Brunson's still going to want his buddies around. So it's $500 million for him and $200 million for Dante DiVincenzo and Mikal Bridges, and we got to bring Thibodeau back unless one of the other coaches are there. Yeah, this has a very rosy feeling to it right now, and this has a very dark side to it. I think in about 3 years, maybe 3 years plus.
Would Jimmy Butler ever do anything like that? And I know it's much different situation. Jimmy is significantly older. He's heading into his final opportunity for a max deal. He wants a 2-year max contract from the Heat with his player option upcoming. Like, I totally understand that. You think Jimmy Butler is making a Jalen Brunson-esque, just in a vacuum, a Jalen Brunson-esque sacrifice?
No. No chance.
I thought
Jimmy Butler's up for a 2-year, $130 million extension. Jimmy Butler wants 2 years, $130 million extension. He doesn't want 2 for 120. He doesn't want 2 for 100. He doesn't want 2 for 80. He doesn't want 1 for 40 and then another 1 for 40. No. This is what I'm eligible for. This is what I want. I can't even hate on Jimmy for it. Jimmy's outside of last year, when I think all the question marks really started coming out about Jimmy and if he really wants to play or if he's really injured, this and that. Before that, I don't think there's a Heat fan on the planet that before last season, when Jimmy came out in his emo gear for the Heat Media Day, whatever it was, that wouldn't give Jimmy Butler a 6-year, $600 million contract because of the way he's played for this team since he's been here. But now you have a little bit of a season where he's not playing up to fully par and he's taking some games off and you're not quite sure. Maybe now the Heat fan a little reluctant to pay him as much as he wants. Pat Riley's going to give him what Pat Riley thinks he deserves. And if Pat Riley gives him the 120, I've learned that in my entire tenure here covering Pat Riley or rooting for this Heat team, I've seen him make some mistakes, a couple. But in really one offseason where he really screwed everything up, that was the Hassan Whiteside offseason with Dion Waiters and James Johnson, because they had nothing else they could do besides trying to bring those guys back. If there's another, he got screwed. He got totally. Ken, it'd be like me and you backed into a corner. We're only allowed to talk to this one person right now, but maybe we could wait 3 months and talk to his buddy who's a bigger guest. We're going to be backed in and take that guy right now and talk to him, because that's where Pat Riley was. Outside of that, I love the fact that Pat Riley will come out and be blatantly honest about all these things. And maybe pisses off some players, but I kind of like it a little bit. But Jimmy Butler is not taking anything less than what he thinks he's deserved, and that's that max deal. And I got a feeling in the back of my mind, Pat Riley's going to give it to him, sign off on that extra 2 years, give him what he wants. Because what else can the Heat do right now? I love the Heat. I love the team. I love the owner. But we've seen in the past that Mickey doesn't necessarily like going over that tax and paying any money for players he doesn't have on this team, or that are extra money for a guy on the team. Jimmy Butler might sign the deal. That doesn't mean Jimmy Butler's going to be here for the next 3 to 4 years. He could be gone before that if something happens. But he's getting his money from the Heat. Total opposite of James Dolan in this whole thing, where I don't see it happening. With Pat, I see it happening.
The Heat have been in such luxury tax or salary cap, having no willingness to go into the luxury tax for so long. And now with the aprons, where you can get outright punished for it, The Heat have just been in cap hell for years and years and years and years and years. I think what's going to happen here with Jimmy, ultimately, Pat Riley just wants a reason to pay Jimmy the max. Like Pat Riley just wants a reason, and that reason is play. Stop the load management. You got to play through some of these minor nicks. You got to do it. And if Jimmy does that this season, then it's a shoo-in, not even a question, no drama. Here's your 2 years, 113, and you're good to go.
Well, let me throw this at you as both of us are trying to be NBA general managers right now. Two options are in front of you, Ken. You are the general manager of the Miami Heat today. You could pay Jimmy Butler the 2 years, $120 million extension, or you could give $60 million a year for the next 3 years to Kawhi Leonard. Who are you giving the money to?
I'm probably sticking with Jimmy.
I am, only because of one thing. Kawhi, you're getting 50 games a year out of. This year was our Kawhi year for Jimmy Butler. Like, you didn't get anything out of him that you – right, exactly. Fingers crossed. Hopefully nothing changes. But, like, imagine paying a guy like that max money, max deal, and know that you're going to get like 45, 50 games out of him a year max during the regular season, and then he might not even be healthy for the playoffs. Has he been, like, in a major playoff series for the Clippers? Not really. I mean, he's been in a couple, like, here and there. But like,
games in a series, I don't think.
Right. Like, he doesn't play the whole series, this and that. This is a guy that after leaving Toronto was like the best player in the NBA. Like he was, it's LeBron or Kawhi. Like it's got to be right up there with these two guys. Kawhi Leonard to me is the best, worst superstar in the NBA. Like he's a great player, but you can't count on him for shit. At this point, I wouldn't pay him any. So I look at Jimmy and I say, as long as Jimmy's got his head on a little bit straighter than last year, I really, at this point in the NBA, have no problem giving him $60 million a year for a couple of years.
Well, I will say the Heat are going to need 70 games out of Jimmy Butler to, if they want any chance of not being in the play-in.
Right. Oh, God, yes.
70 games, because this roster, other than Bam, flat out stinks. Like it's not a contending roster. It's still, because you've got Bam, because there's Jimmy, if you get any consistency from Tyler Hero, you're still a playoff team, but you're destined for the play-in right now. You've got to get 70 games at least from Jimmy in the regular season, or you're sweating it out. You're really sweating it out late. But Jalen Brunson, back to the original talking point here. Like Jalen Brunson, it is awful, because having to spend any time being positive about the Knicks makes you die inside. But how can you, even the most thorough Knicks hater, how can you say anything derogatory about Jalen Brunson and what he's attempting to do with that franchise? It's commendable. It is, and I know that's underselling it, but it's just extremely commendable.
I want to throw up in my mouth talking good about the Knicks right now. Like literally, I'm going to be sick to my stomach. But you can't hate on a team that's doing the right thing, or not the team doing the right thing. A player who is actually moving them in the right direction from what it looks like at this point. Although it would have been fun to see Jalen Brunson, Kyrie Irving, and Luka on the same in the same front court in Dallas if Jalen would have stayed there. That'd have been interesting also. Well, they would have never had Kyrie at that point.
To go take his own thing, to go do his own thing.
Play for his dad also. That's a pretty cool thing too. Make $60 million or whatever it is and play for your dad for a couple of years.
That does beg the question, to be the third best player on a championship team, or the face of a championship team, or the opportunity to be the face of a championship team, a less certain championship team. Right. What do you choose in that spot? Because you're right. If it's Brunson and it's Kyrie and it's Luka, then you have a much better chance at winning a championship, in my opinion, than the way the Knicks are currently constituted. Right. But this Knicks story, I think it would be way more fulfilling for Jalen Brunson to be the face of this spunky Knicks group, this group of overachievers, even flirting with a championship, than it would be to be the third guy on a championship team featuring Kyrie and Luka. And let's be honest, once Kyrie was up for his money, there's no way that Jalen Brunson was going to be hanging around anyway.
Right. No, there's no. I'll tell you what, it's not even a question, and this is not even this is a no-brainer answer. Jalen Brunson, if the stars align for this guy and that team, and he somehow could take the Knicks to a championship and be the face of that championship team, he's a legend in New York for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
His kids are legends in New York the rest of their life. His dad, Rick Brunson, who didn't do much in the NBA, a legend in New York the rest of his life. And that entire Brunson name will be known around the city of New York and around Madison Square Garden forever. The next player to take the Knicks to a championship has legendary status all over him, no matter what happens after that. The next year, Jalen Brunson could stink, average 12 a game, and be traded. He'll still be the legend of New York after that, no matter. If you could take the Knicks or the Lakers, one of the big teams, and LeBron did it a couple years ago, but especially the Knicks at this point, who have been so bad for decades. I mean, we talk about it and we joke about the Dolphins down here in South Florida, that we're still celebrating 50 years later, the 72 team, and how great it is, and Larry Zonka and Mercury Morris and Bob Gracie. The Knicks are in the same boat. The Knicks haven't won anything in 50 years. They might have been to the finals once, like Spreewell and these guys. That's fine. That's great. You didn't win. You didn't win at all. They're doing the same thing in New York, and that media and that area is so much worse than down here in Miami. It's hard probably being a Knicks player in general at this point, knowing that every year you're going to go into it and not win. But, man, if you could take him there, holy. Can you imagine Jalen Brunson? They'd have food named after him in restaurants. There would be hot dog stands named the Brunson stand. Like, it would be ridiculous to win in New York at that point. I hope it never happens.
Right.
I hope it never happens. But, man, if you could do it, New York would be the one place right now that I would love to be a star player in a team and the star player that took them to the championship at this point.
There we go. Just because I got to do it to make myself feel better. The Knicks are built for a regular season success. There we go. It felt good to get that off my chest. Whew.
Yeah, 2 seed that could easily lose in the first round to the 7th seed.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
That's it. You feel better? Because I already knew that. That's like, I feel like that's tattooed in my head whenever I think anything positive about the Knicks. I always think at this point, they could be the 1 seed to lose to the 8 any given year. I'm happy. I'm good. Let's go.
Oh, that was a weight off my shoulders. My God. Hey, it's summertime. You know what that means, Zach? Lists upon lists upon lists. And ESPN, my sweet God, do they have a copious amount of lists right now, including who's number one, where they go through every position in the NFL and they talk to scouts and talk to executives to determine who at each position is number one. And you'll never guess the position that's the number one position that they're going with on this series of lists.
Quarterback?
Yes, the quarterback position. ESPN.com. Who are the NFL's best quarterbacks, execs, coaches, and scouts? Help rank 2024's top 10, because 10 is always the arbitrary number we use for these lists. All right, so I'm going to give you in order the top 10 quarterbacks according to scouts, execs, and coaches in the NFL on ESPN.com. Summer list time. Number one. This one's pretty obvious. Patrick Mahomes.
Oh, I thought you were going to say 2. Right.
Last year's ranking 1. He's number 1. Joe Burrow is at number 2. Speaking of
that's a little questionable for me. Now Joe Burrow healthy is probably right up there. Joe Burrow's not coming off a healthy year. You know, we're projecting what it could be at this point. Joe Burrow wouldn't be 2 on my list, but I get it. But, you know, he's popular, so there he goes.
Josh Allen.
Got great hair.
Josh Allen 3, where he was last year, 3. Lamar Jackson getting love at number 4. Number 4 coming off an AFC title game appearance. Number 5, Matthew Stafford, the ageless wonder at 36. He was 10 going into last year, all the way up to 5 after his renaissance, which probably means that he's spending a lot of time out of the house and not having to spend time with that chatty wife of his. Number 6, Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert at number 6, down 1 from last year's ranking. In fact, CJ Stroud, obviously not ranked a year ago, all the way into the top 7. CJ Stroud. Here's number 8, Aaron Rodgers, down 4 after we saw him for 3 plays last year, but still in the top 10, Aaron Rodgers. Number 9, Jared Goff, top 10 quarterbacks according to scouts, coaches, execs in the NFL on ESPN.com. Jared Goff at number 9. He was an honorable mention going into last year. And at number 10, down 1 spot from 2023, Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott at number 10. So those are your top 10. Let me just review so you have it fresh in your brain before we get to honorable mention here, Zach. Number 1, Patrick Mahomes. Number 2, Joe Burrow. Number 3, Josh Allen. At 4, Lamar Jackson. Your 5th best quarterback is Matthew Stafford, followed by Justin Herbert, C.J. Stroud, Aaron Rodgers, Jared Goff, and Dak Prescott. Those are your top 10 quarterbacks. So you say you're not sure, though, you'd have Burrow at 2.
No, I wouldn't have Burrow at 2. Not going into the season after last season. I know he might be healthy. That's fine. I mean, if you're a Cincinnati Bengal fan right now, you have a franchise quarterback, and that's amazing. Some teams still looking for it. Some teams might have it. They don't want to pay him. I'm kind of getting a little nervous. If Joe Burrow gets nicked up again this year somehow, some way, are we calling him injury prone, Joe Burrow, at this point? Because he's got him.
If he gets hurt this year, are we calling him Kawhi Leonard of quarterbacks?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, it's got to be close, right? I mean, we're talking about a guy that on any given day could be number 1, number 2, number 3 quarterback in the league, but also on any given day could be out for 4 or 5 games with an injury. So, yeah, it's got to be close to that at this point. If I'm a Bengals fan or if I'm in the Bengals front office, if something else happens to Joe Burrow this year, I'm not drafting a quarterback first overall next year if I'm the Bengals, but I might take a peek at someone in the 2nd or 3rd round just to have the backup there at that point, because you did give Joe Burrow a bleep ton of money at this point, making him either the highest or 2nd highest paid player on an annual average in the NFL. Yeah, I wouldn't have him at 2 at this point, and that's only because of injuries in the last couple of years. He hasn't stayed healthy, and that's a problem. Although when he is, he takes his team to a Super Bowl, but you got to stay healthy.
Isn't that the argument, though, for maybe him being at 2, is that when he plays, the Bengals are entirely different than the increasingly common instances where he's hurt? Nobody has thrown a greater completion percentage this many at this point of their career than Joe Burrow. He's tops in that category. They were 4-1 in that stretch he did play mid-season before he got hurt and was done for the rest of the year. So maybe that does justify number 2, though I think injuries, grand scheme of things, when we're talking resume and we're talking impact, that's got to have an effect on it if you can't stay on the field, because that's been the argument against Tua up until last year. Speaking of, let's get an honorable mention. Brock Purdy, honorable mention. Jordan Love, honorable mention. And Jordan Love is fascinating because he is judged solely off of 8 games right now in his entire career. Jalen Hurts, honorable mention. Kirk Cousins, honorable mention. Trevor Lawrence, honorable mention. And then, yes, Tua is honorable mention for the first time in his career, according to coaches, execs, and scouts. Is there anybody in the top 10 you'd put Tua over?
Is there anyone in the top 10 I would put Tua over?
Let's go through the bottom 4 in the top.
Right.
So 10, 8, 7. Dak.
I'd have a hard time putting him right now over Dak. Just, they're so close.
Dak, Goff, Rodgers, and Stroud. We'll go with those 4.
Stroud's too low on that list for me. He should be higher up on that list. Higher than Justin Herbert, that's for sure. Yeah, I mean, I would take Tua over Goff. I would take Tua over Goff, even though Goff just had a really good year. It would be close with Dak. I would take C.J. Stroud over Tua. Yeah, it's close.
Here's my thing with Stroud, and he was absolutely excellent last year. Like, he was, and he's super fun to watch, especially after how bad a start the Texans got off to. To do what he was able to do is amazing. That said, you realize in the regular season, Zach, the Texans did not beat a single team that went to the playoffs, right?
Sounds familiar. Right.
They didn't beat a single team that ended up the only team they beat that went to the playoffs was Tampa. Okay. A 39-37 game in November. Like CJ Stroud, my point is CJ Stroud put up crazy numbers as a rookie, and he won a playoff game in resounding fashion against a 40-year-old Joe Flacco in a Browns team that came in just completely how
they still made the playoffs. I'll never understand.
They had to expend all of what they had left in the tank from a karma standpoint and from a health standpoint to get into the postseason, and then everything fell apart in Houston. But CJ Stroud won a playoff game. That said, CJ Stroud to me is the biggest candidate to regress in year 2. And I'm not talking about he suck, but I'm saying that it was a really strong confluence of events. A new voice in Houston from a coaching perspective, a quarterback that was expected to be extremely raw, that was a little further along than what people thought. Now you've got a season of film on them. We've got a season of film on them, and the schedule is more difficult for the Texans as well. I just think by those factors, he's a candidate for regression to where I think you would at least be discussing him in the Tua conversation at the end of 2024. That's my big, broad prediction here.
No, that's okay. And to be honest with you, I'm completely opposite on that, where I think that C.J. Stroud will be number 2 on this list next year when we talk about it. I think that it'll still be Patrick Mahomes number 1, and I think C.J. Stroud will be 2, maybe 3, depending on how Burrow, if Burrow stays healthy and has a good season, Burrow's number 2. He's just going to be there. I only argue that being 2 now because of what happened last season. We're putting these people in kind of compartments based on just what they think, not what they saw last season, and that's fine also. But with that said, I just don't know. The big knock on Tua going into last season was durability, and the guy played 17 games. How many guys on that list in front of Tua played 17 games last year for their team? Probably not a bunch. Maybe a couple, but not all of them. That's for sure. I already know 2 off the top of my head that did not, and that's the number 2 person on your list and number 6 person on the list, Burrow and Herbert. So I know that. I just think with C.J. Stroud, they built something around this kid with a bunch of young players and a young coach where it's for him to succeed. His numbers might go down a little bit, but I think the team will still be as good or better because they're a much better team at this point. And maybe he doesn't need to do as much as he did last year to take that team to the playoffs. But I do think C.J. Stroud is going to jump up on that list. I'm opposite with you there. I think Aaron Rodgers is too high on that list also, even though Aaron Rodgers could have a magical season. And, God, this is almost as bad as a conversation as the Knicks one before. And if he does stay healthy all season long, the Jets should be good. They have a really good defense. And if he puts up decent numbers, they'll have a really good offense. Going backwards, I think Matt Stafford's going to go backwards on that list. And go down. I think Tua could be better off than him come next year on this list. Dak Prescott to me is someone that they love and hate in Dallas, but I think he would be great. I think he'd be okay on 5 or 6 other teams that need quarterbacks right now to be that guy to take him to the playoffs. I just think Dallas is a different animal for everybody at this point.
I do think Dak, you can plug him in places. Doug too.
Yeah, but Doug and Dak both. Right. Dak. Think about Dak. If Dak went to the Jets and there was a Jets quarterback, I think the Jets offense would be significantly better. Not better than if Aaron Rodgers is healthy, but significantly better, and he'd be a good player there. There are very few quarterbacks that you could do that with, where you could just plug and play a guy. And I think Dak is one of those guys just because of his play and the way he is. They're just so weird in Dallas about their star players and guys. It's unbelievable. But yeah, that Brock Purdy not being in the top 10 after last year is kind of weird also. What a love affair they had with Brock Purdy though for them not to put him on the list.
Right. If you're gonna keep Tua in the honorable mention, then
Brock Purdy should be too. Right. What about Jalen Hurts? Jalen Hurts has one kind of off season to a point.
Jalen Hurts got exposed badly last year, in my opinion. He is not nearly as dynamic as people were trying to make him out to be.
The year before, right.
And so I think Jalen Hurts is fine, but I'm no longer in the camp of wholeheartedly, full-throated putting Jalen Hurts above Tua in the conversation of quarterbacks in this pantheon here. So this is the point of me bringing it up, though, because when you look at contracts, when you look at the numbers, all right, top 10 quarterbacks here, Joe Burrow, Jared Goff, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson. Those are 4 of the top 5 paid quarterbacks. The anomaly in all of this is the honorable mention guy we mentioned, and Trevor Lawrence. And he's what's screwing everything up for this Tua contract extension, in my opinion. Because you have an honorable mention guy in Trevor Lawrence who is making the second most money fully guaranteed of anybody in football. And that is where we have the holdup. And that's where the Tua negotiation is stuck in the mud.
Right.
This list justified to me what I've been saying for a while. I think that Tua is somewhere between Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts. Lamar Jackson, the $51 million per year $52 million per year. Jalen Hurts, $51 million per year.
Right.
Okay? Lamar Jackson, total guaranteed $185. Jalen Hurts, total guaranteed $179.3. Fully guaranteed, Lamar Jackson, $135. Jalen Hurts, $110. Tua lives somewhere in that number, okay?
Right.
Problem is, Trevor Lawrence, who Tua should be making just as much as, if not more, Trevor Lawrence is at $142 million of fully guaranteed money. Like, that's literally in his bank account right now. $142 million, or when the contract kicks in. Right. That is a full $32 million more than Jalen Hurts. That is a full $7 million more than Lamar Jackson. And if Tua lives between Hurts and Jackson, and Tua's talking about the market is the market is completely blown up by Trevor Lawrence. And this is the problem that Chris Grier finds himself in. Because it is, to me, it's irrational to go up to Joe Burrow money with Tua Tagovailoa. But Trevor Lawrence's shitty contract, great for Trevor, shitty for everybody else, his shitty contract is what puts Tua thinking that he should be making Joe Burrow-esque money, or even the Trevor Lawrence-esque money. That's what sucks about this. The Trevor Lawrence deal is why things feel a bit tenuous right now with Tua. And this list compiled by ESPN in the summer of lists, that fortified everything I've been saying about where Tua should lie, but also exposes how badly that Trevor Lawrence deal is creating a tense situation with the Dolphins.
Yeah, and my hot take prediction on this is that when it's all said and done and Tua does get his contract extension in the next week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is, Tua's going to be a top 5. He'll be in the top 5. He'll be in the top 5 somehow, some way. The Dolphins are being backed into a corner because of, like what you just said, that Trevor Lawrence deal and everything around that. And if they wait, here's my hot take on this is, if they do make him play 5th-year option and then go into next season with that, it's going to get worse because someone else is going to get another deal, and then the market is going to be the market again, except it's going to be like Brock Purdy market or someone else market, and it's going to be even more money to sign him. I think right now they're going to end up paying him like a top 5 quarterback in the league. 2 years from now, that's going to be like a top 12 quarterback in the league. Once Mahomes gets more money and Allen gets more money and everyone else kind of re-ups and redoes their thing, and he'll be right exactly where we think he should be, making top 10 money or top 12 money in the NFL and not top 5. But the only way to get over that hump is to give him that top 5 money signing bonus, the whole deal. I know some Dolphin fans are going to cringe at saying that. I just look at it like this. Where else are you going to find a guy right now that fits Mike McDaniel's offense the way it is? And you might have a 1 or 2 year window right now, because if you really look at it, really, really break it down, last year's Dolphins roster, top to bottom, is probably the best roster they've had in 20 or 30 years. Even Marino days, Jason Taylor days, the whole deal. This roster is not as good defensively because obviously guys got hurt and guys left. This roster is not far off, if not better offensively, outside of an offensive lineman, Robert Hunt, that left and Connor Williams left, which will end up being important by the end of the season because we know how offensive linemen are. But if they could somehow do the whole quick throw thing that they want to do with Tua, offensive line will not matter as much as it should be in like a running game, and Tua's going to have another monster stat year. He's going to get paid like a top 5 quarterback, and like I said, 2 years from now, it'll be top 8, top 12, whatever it is, and he'll end up being the market is the market then. But until that happens, I think there's only one way to make Tua happy, is to pay him that much money. As much as Chris Grier probably wants to slap me for saying that, I think that's where my hot take truth is going to be here.
You've already got discussion about Jordan Love, who's been good for 8 games in his professional life,
right?
Making a $300 million contract. You got to get him. You can't let him play on the option, in my opinion. Right. You've got to lock him up, because if you let him play on the option, and Jordan Love, say he has another good 8 games, and the Packers make the playoffs but don't win a title, but you've got a guy who's played maybe a full season of good football and Jordan Love combined, and he's getting paid $300 million, then you are truly screwed trying to extend Tua. You gotta get it done. It's gotta get done.
I mean, in your scenario, Jordan Love takes Green Bay to the playoffs, they lose in the first round. Dolphins go to the playoffs, maybe lose in the first round again this year also. Jordan Love plays 14 games, Tua plays 16. Let's say Tua gets one game out where he's not playing. That's 2 years for Tua, 33 games, almost 2 full seasons worth of work without missing much at all and getting to the playoffs now a couple years in a row, even though they didn't win a game. And then Jordan Love signs, like you said, a 6-year, $360 million deal with 190 guaranteed. What do you think Tua's agents are going to go to the Dolphins with? They're going to go to the Dolphins and say, this guy doesn't play full seasons. Yes, the same thing with us. We don't win a playoff game. That's fine. Look at my numbers. Look at my durability the last couple of years when it's being questioned. If he's getting $60 million a year, I deserve $65 million a year. It's not going to get any better. Pay him top 5 now. It'll end up being top 10 in 2 years. Only way to get through this hump. Otherwise, can you imagine if they do the 5th-year option and then they have him locked up if they want 2 years on the franchise? But let's say after the 5th-year option, he has a great year. Let's say they win a playoff game. They beat Pittsburgh in the opening round at Hard Rock Stadium next year here, or someone. Cincinnati. Imagine they beat Joe Burrow in the first round of the playoffs next year at Hard Rock Stadium. Do you realize what that sit-down is going to be like with Chris Greer? Remember what we talked about last year, Chris? Throw all those numbers away. Here are the new ones right now. Lock him up. Get it done. Stop. If this is the training camp everyday news, I'm going to throw up. Every single day, if Mike McDaniel, first question is, any new news on Tua and the extension? Because that's what it's going to end up being for a couple weeks if he's not signed.
Yeah. God.
Gross. You've been there. You've been there at camp when all of a sudden it's one thing, and not necessarily the quarterback, but let's say one guy's contract, and every single day we start with the same questions. It's Omar, it's Hal, it's this person, it's that person. Any news on the extension? Any news on the extension? That's what it's going to be times 20 if it's Tua that we're talking about now.
A 2025 void on the deal for Jordan Love. Like he is going to be after this season, they're going to be talking extension. That's the existential money threat for the Dolphins and Tua. If they can't come to terms before the end of this season, if they have them play on the option, Jordan Love becomes the existential threat that's already been started by that ridiculous bloated contract that was given to Trevor Lawrence. Speaking of bloated, by the way, you have an adult thing coming up, a very significant, very coming of age adult thing taking place. What are you preparing for, Zach?
1 week from today, I am 45 years old and I have to go in for a colonoscopy. I have to take those pills and that powder, that whole 24 hours beforehand, make myself absolutely miserable, get put on a table, get put to sleep, and wake up like nothing ever happened, except for someone had a tube up my you-know-what and probably taken everything out. It's my nightmare of nightmares. Yes, I'm obviously, and no one should take this wrong way, I'm scared of getting any kind of cancer. I'm scared of getting into a car accident. I'm scared of my dog dying. I'm scared of a million things. Something happening to my kid. Oh, my God. Whatever I just said, whatever the next number on that list is, that's where next Monday is in my head right now. I am on a group text message with 10 of my buddies. We have been friends since we're 4, 5, and 6 years old. Do the math. That's 40 years I've known all these guys. So we're all the same age outside of 2 of us that are about 6 or 8 months older than the other. We're all talking about colonoscopies. It's the saddest text chain you've ever seen outside of the day after or a couple hours after someone gets it done and they're smiling and happy. But for 24 hours before every one of our procedures, there has been nothing but pray for me. Oh, my God, what are we doing? The whole deal. And I am a week out, and I couldn't be more scared than I am right now for something I probably shouldn't be scared for. It's a life thing. But good God almighty, Ken, I've been telling you since last Friday, I have not slept like more than 3 hours straight thinking about a giant tube up my
here's the thing, though. Like, you're not even gonna feel it. This is
nothing.
The thing. I think
nothing.
To me, I'm still a handful of years out, God willing, from going through this the first time.
Bless you. Yeah.
Your issue is going to be Sunday.
Yeah,
that's going to be your issue. Monday. Have you ever used? Do you own or have you ever used a bidet?
Oh, my parents had one. Yeah, for years. Yeah.
To me, like I would treat the colonoscopy as just one elaborate bidet. How good does that feel? This is going to be fantastic. No big deal. The problem is Sunday, where you might as well just say goodbye to your wife and your son because you're going to be tucked away in the bathroom for the vast majority of the day. And you know what? That's not entirely bad. That's not an entirely bad thing, because that's where we go anyways when we need a little bit of a break. Is bring your phone, bring a book, bring a magazine, whatever, maybe one of those old handheld Jordan versus Bird games, if you still own one of those.
I have a Game Boy at my parents' house. I'm going to have to go pick that up, right?
Yeah, until a football, like, it's fine. Just use it with the little red dots running around. Like, it's fine. You're going to spend most of your day in there, but I say after Sunday, and you don't have to lose sleep over that. It's not like you haven't had days in your life where you spent most of the day pooping. This will be no different. It'll just be maybe a little more urgent, and you move on. I think Monday is going to be a great day for you, to be quite honest.
From your mouth to God's ears and my doctor's fingers at that point.
And your anus. Yeah.
And my anus, right. From all those things happening at once. Yeah, it's just more of a kind of scare tactic that my friends have all put into each other when getting ready for this. Because then when it's all done, everyone's very happy and all this stuff. But when I saw the packet that my buddy Rosie had from the doctor that looked like he picked up, I don't know, a quarter pound of cocaine in a bag, and it was the powder he had to drink before that morning. Yeah, it's a little bit. Listen, I'm not scared of a lot, but
you got to get after it.
I know. Like, you can't leave. And the doctor said, he gave me the stuff to pick up, and I got to pick it up this Friday to start it on Sunday morning. Yep. Yeah, it's intimidating. I've taken my share of, nights in college and illegal activities. This, I'm beaten up thinking about this. Good God Almighty.
Here's another positive here. I don't know if you have stomach issues. I know that in the past I've had some pronounced stomach issues, and then I really, really watched my diet and things improved. I don't know if you suffer from stomach issues. What I will tell you is that now, if you do, you have a great chance. Maybe there's something lodged in there from like 2003, right? And it's just stuck in there, causing you inflammation and all sorts of issues. Maybe you've got some reflux, or you have a rumbly tummy a lot, or maybe some inconsistent evacuations, if you will. This might very well, like a mine, it might very well flush out whatever foreign body has been affecting you since the early aughts. And all of a sudden, you're a new man. You're regular again. Things are well formed once again. You're happier. You have a sunshinier outlook on life. I really think that Sunday could be a big transformative day for you, Zach.
Oh, it's going to be a big something day. I don't know how transformative or whatnot it's going to be, but something is going to end up happening extremely big on Sunday. And that's part of my scare tactics going into all this. More than anything, it's more scary that I'm 45 years old and I have to go through this than it is actually going through this. It's the fact that I'm getting older. Yeah. And now it's those things that I used to laugh at. Oh my God, screening for this, or have to go do this when you get to a certain age. Well, I am at that certain age, and that the text conversations that used to go on were about, like, I don't know, what we're doing on Friday night. What do you got this? What kind of girl you're with? This and that. To us talking about dad stuff and like adult stuff. And I'm not ready for it yet. I'm not even close to being mature enough for it yet.
You're going through something a little existential, and that's fine. But again, I think if you embrace being 45 and you say to yourself, man, it would feel real good to be able to unload all of this waste that's been accumulating. It's time for a fresh start. Look at it as a fresh start. Right, you're 45, but you might end up feeling 20 after all this. Here's my recommendation. Eat bland on Saturday.
Right.
Eat bland on Saturday. Make this easier on yourself and the health of your O-ring. Just bland food on Saturday, because you don't want anything spicy or tomatoey to make this an acidy experience. You don't want that.
No, I think I'm good with that. I think Mark Hochman, my old partner, used to say, it's time for a full evacuation, and I think that's what's happening on Sunday here in the Krantz household. Some sort of full evacuation.
Yeah, pack up the car. Time to head north of 95.
Right,
and it's going to be fine. And just get gassed up, which might remedy that problem too, and you'll be in great shape. So I'm actually excited for you, because I think you're about to turn a corner.
I'm glad one of us is excited, because it's not me at this point. I think my wife at this time is planning somehow, some way to put me in a hotel room Sunday night. Like, that's how bad she's like wants me out of the house because she knows how nervous I am. Like, that's how crazy we might be.
You know what? Better to put the hotel through the punishment than your own home.
I wouldn't be upset by it. As long as they have cable TV, I think I'll be all right.
I tell you what, you just roll the TV in front of the bathroom door, and that sounds
I'll sleep in it. Right. I'll sleep in the bathroom. I mean,
that sounds like living right there.
I can't live in 45. Oh, my God.
Yeah, I know. But it matters how you feel. How you feel. And I do think that this could be a big step for the psyche and the physical health of one Zach Krantz. And I have never given a colonoscopy pep talk before, but you know what? This felt real natural.
You did it. You've done it. I think we found another kind of side job for you at this point. You could just talk to people like on Zoom calls right before their colonoscopy, because I do feel a little bit better than I did about 5 minutes ago, and definitely better than I did yesterday when I was thinking about what's going to happen a week from now. Yeah, no,
I'm just trying to do my part for you, and this leads me to my next project, a new podcast called Butt Stuff with Ken LaVicka.
Well, I'm glad that was your test dummy. It worked. Totally worked. Right.
So we'll talk again before the Big Bang happens. But make sure to subscribe. YouTube.com/@AllAccountShow. YouTube.com/@AllAccountShow. The podcast. RSS.com/podcast/AllAccountShow. Zach, here's to Hard Rock Stadium being repaired in due time. No gate stormings, please, over the next couple of days. We would certainly appreciate that. And a lot of people are going to go zombie mode here with the college football game coming out. So I think that this is at least good background watching, listening for those that are going to be planted in front of their television for the next 72, 96, 120 hours upcoming, and isolating themselves from their families. So on that note, Zach, you enjoy this lead up. If you need any moral support, more butt stuff, just let me know.
We just need to end Friday's episode coming up at the end of the week with the last 10 minutes has to be Ken LaVicka's more butt stuff with Zach Krantz. That's how we're going to end Friday.
Right. More butt stuff coming on Friday. Zach, I'm Ken. We'll talk to you later in the week. This has been By All Accounts. Bye-bye.